Welcome back to the Exposure History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. The piano clanged, boots thumped, and bullets chewed the floorboards as a cowboy did a nervous dance. Behind the bar, the barkeep lifted his rifle and the room went still. That was town life. Out on the plains, these quiet hunters kept people alive, bringing meat, pelts, and trail wisdom. They vanished for months, then traded with posts and local tribes. A man pulls a gun in the White Dog Saloon, Fort Worth. Smoke fills the room and people duck. Scenes like this pushed reformers to act. Soon the Anti-Saloon League formed. It had one aim: ban alcohol. Saloons kept pouring, but the fight over drinking moved into politics. Moonlight washed a dusty trail as a rider in velvet halted a posse with a smile. Belle Starr, the bandit queen, liked charm first and pistols second. She slipped through border towns, traded favors for silence, and knew every creek crossing by heart. With Sam Starr beside her, she ruled the back roads until a shotgun ambush ended her legend, not her name. Old Tascosa, 1907. At the Equity Bar, cowboys lean on the rail, boots dusty, glasses raised. Once called the cowboy capital of Texas, the town sat far from rails and law. Its tough people and empty miles made saloons handy shelters for drifters and for fugitives. Steamboat was the rodeo horse no rider could tame. Wild, powerful, and stubborn, it came to stand for Wyoming's grit. The horse's rearing pose still rides across the state's license plates, a bold black silhouette. One glance and you feel the old frontier, dust, cheers, and the tough spirit people call the Wild West. A pistol flashes in the White Dog Saloon in Fort Worth. Men dive as smoke drifts. Nights like this gave temperance folks their best argument. Soon, the Anti-Saloon League organized. One issue, one goal: dry America. Barrooms kept drinking. Politics started fighting. Miles City, about 1880. The Bob Saloon sits on the plain. After long days herding cattle or freighting, men came to sit, swap talk, and drink a cold beer. Some nights were loud, other evenings looked like this. Boots up, dust settling, nothing urgent. Down in a church basement, townsfolk passed lemonade and swore off whiskey. They were tired of barroom guns and glass on the street. A new league promised to dry the land. Far away, Geronimo guided a small band through the heat and dust, always on the move. Among them, a boy named Jimmy learned new songs and names. When soldiers found him, he cried. He already felt at home. Men crowd the roadhouse after a cold day in Bluff City, Alaska, swapping news over the bar. As the frontier grew, saloons multiplied and specialized. By the century's end, you could pick your place: gambling rooms, dance halls, restaurant bars, bowling saloons, even brothels. Before sunrise on a dusty Louisiana road, a quiet man checked his rifle and waited. Frank Hamer, once a Texas Ranger, had chased Bonnie and Clyde for months across 5 states. The trap snapped shut in 1934. His fights didn't end there. He faced down the Ku Klux Klan and stepped into angry crowds to stop lynchings, choosing law over fear. Summit County, 1890. At the Weaver Brothers Saloon, men lean on the long bar for warm beer or a shot of rye. Not every pour was honest. To stretch the bottle, some barkeeps spiked whiskey with cayenne, gunpowder, even ammonia. Throats burned, tills filled. Snow stung the road and the lantern swung. Mary Fields leaned into the reins and kept the mail moving. 6 feet tall, cigar in her teeth, rifle by her seat, she earned the name Stagecoach Mary. Wolves, robbers, and whiteout skies tried her and lost. In Montana, she ran her route on time, earned the town's respect. At Winslow's Fashion Saloon, the Hash Knife Cowboys lean on the bar for a moment. They began as riders for the Aztec Land and Cattle Company, tending huge herds. Soon came gunplay, rustling rumors, and night rides. The brand was a hash knife. The name stuck, and so did the trouble. Dust blew across the Arizona road as a slight drifter waved down the stage. The drifter was Pearl Hart, hat low, rifle steady. She took the cash, tipped her cap, and rode off. The disguise didn't last. Caught and sent to Yuma, she posed for a stern mugshot, then charmed reporters with bold talk. A few years later, good behavior opened the gate. Wind skims the hill as a woman in buckskins rests a hand on a headstone. Wild Bill Hickok. Calamity Jane says they were sweethearts, tells the stone a joke, and moves on. Years later, her last wish is honored. She's laid beside him, two legends sharing silence under deadwood grass. Before noon in Tombstone, 1881, a church bell rang and dust drifted. Then boots hammered Fremont Street. In a cramped lot near the OK Corral, the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday met the cowboys, pistols loud enough to shake windows. Minutes later, it was over. A year later, fire ate the corral. The ashes could not kill the story. The gunfight made Tombstone forever. On the Rio Grande at Langtree, a weathered porch bore the sign, "Law West of the Pecos." Inside, Judge Roy Bean ran court and bar in one room. He picked juries from drinkers, fined with rounds, and once blasted a rival saloon. Rough justice, Texas style. He was the kid who drew fast and left a trail across New Mexico. Yet on this rare afternoon, the gunslinger set down his revolver and picked up a croquet mallet, not a golf club. In a dusty yard, he laughed with friends and tapped a wooden ball. The image doesn't erase cattle thefts, jailbreaks, or the Lincoln County War, but it shows the outlaw also had calm, ordinary hours. Table Bluff. Inside the hotel saloon, pelts hang thick and boots thaw by the stove. Mountain men and trappers swap trail maps and stories. These hard travelers scouted wagon routes and river crossings, opening paths west. Many chased the booming fur trade and found towns rising behind them. An Apache mother stands in profile. A cradle board is tied to her back, a strap over her shoulder. Her baby peeks from the hood, warm and snug. The board keeps the child safe while she walks, works, or rides. Her long hair hangs loose. Her skirt brushes the ground. Steady steps, quiet strength, everyday life so simple, yet complicated. First came the whisper, then the stampede. In 1876, Deadwood rose from the pines like a campfire story made real. Gold flashed in pans and drew gamblers, drifters, and gun hands by the wagon load. Streets filled with tents, whiskey, and quick deals. Law was thin, luck ruled. Under low-hanging lamps, three men crowd a felt-topped faro table in the White Elephant Saloon, Bingham, Utah, 1906. Chips stack like tiny towers. A dealer's box clicks, cards sliding fast. No shouting, just tight smiles and broom-swept sawdust. Faro moved money quicker than poker, and on paydays these chairs filled, miners trading coal dust for luck until the lamps burned thin. Dust crunches under boots as men idle beneath a crooked sign. Jackson's Bar in Idaho. One rests a rifle like a walking stick, another lingers in the doorway. Two in long coats pose as if they own the night. In places like this, whiskey bought courage and trouble. Cards slapped, tempers rose, and a quiet drink could turn into a loud mistake. On a dusty lot beside the rail yard, men dropped their day jobs and picked up a bat. Miners with coal-streaked hands, merchants in straw hats, even sailors calling balls and strikes. The town's baseball club wasn't fancy. Patched uniforms, a scuffed ball, laughter loud as the train. For 9 innings, rivals became teammates, and the wild frontier sat down and breathed. The saloon doors swung, and a tall woman with a quick smile took the room. Big Nose Kate could pour whiskey, stitch a wound, and out-argue any man. She ran rooms, nursed the sick, and rode beside Doc Holliday through towns that liked trouble. When his luck ran thin, she stayed longer than anyone, steady as a post, showing that loyalty can be louder than guns. At Promontory Summit in 1869, 2 locomotives touch noses as crews cheer, the moment later called the Golden Spike. With that final strike, the first transcontinental railroad snapped coast to coast turning months of travel into days and reshaping the map. Chinese and Irish workers blasted tunnels, laid rails, and carried the danger that made the celebration possible. Park City. Glasses lift, a piano taps, and miners trade stories before the next shift. Utah drinking has long had rules. Today, the state controls wholesale liquor and grocery store beer tops out at 4% alcohol. Yet in this room, then and now, a small pour can start a big night. Bright bunting drapes the back bar at Lagoon Resort. Bartenders in white coats stand straight as bottles gleam. Locals in caps crowd the rail. A dog noses the floor. It feels like a holiday. Cold drinks, framed photos, easy talk, summer starting. In 1892, a man stands beside a white cliff of bones, so tall they called it Bison Skull Mountain. Each skull is a missing animal from herds once so thick they darkened the plains. The bones were sold for fertilizer and bone char, the profit after the kill. The photo feels quiet, but it shouts a warning about waste, greed, and how fast abundance can vanish. In 1890 at Pine Ridge, the ghost dance turns the plain into a wide, moving circle. Men, women, and children sway, calling for renewal and hoping the world will heal. Drums thud, dust lifts, shirts flutter like small flags of prayer. The camera catches faith and fear in one frame, a country at the edge, listening hard for change. Elliott's Combination Saloon in Utah hummed low. Bottles stood like soldiers, eyes did not. Between slow sips and tight silences, every man seemed ready to do one of two things: raise a toast or raise a gun. April 12, 1904. A canvas tent flaps in the desert wind. An auctioneer climbs a crate, lifts a map of Imperial, and starts the bidding. Farmers, speculators, and drifters crowd close, hats waving, deeds promised. They buy dusty rectangles on faith. Water will come, streets will follow, a town will rise. By sundown, the lots are gone. Hope owns the valley. At noon on April 22, 1889, a cannon fired and the prairie moved. Wagons jumped, horses ran, and people raced to pound stakes into open ground. This was the Oklahoma land rush of 1889. By sunset, towns had names and rough streets. Some Sooners slipped in early. The rush gave new starts to many and took land, again, from native nations. One day rewrote a map. Calamity Jane swung into the saddle and took the lead. She read the stars, found water, and kept the mules moving. When fear rose, her voice was steady. Through bad country and long miles, she rode point. Days later, every wagon rolled into Deadwood alive. On a wooden boardwalk in Bingham, around 1900, a crowd fills the frame, miners with coal on their sleeves, women in aprons, kids perched on laps. A painted sign reads, "California Bar." Next door, the Italian boarding house takes in new arrivals. Beer posters hang crooked, boots muddy from the mines. After long shifts, this corner gave food, beds, and a place to swap news in many accents. Debris blew across the valley of the Little Bighorn. From the cottonwoods, Crazy Horse kicked his pony and called his fighters on. They swept over the ridge and smashed Custer's 7th Cavalry in minutes. By evening, the river was still again. A year later, Crazy Horse surrendered and died under guard, but the picture that lasts is the charge, the fearless rider leading from the front. River mist lifted off the Mahakam as narrow canoes slid into Long Bagoon. The 1898 to 1900 expedition packed crates, rifles, and notebooks, while Dayak guides checked paddles and rattan ropes. Ahead lay rapids, rain, and leeches. Behind, the last trading post. They mapped new bends, took pictures, and shared firelight stories. Under a hot Arizona sky, crews laid track mile by mile. Immigrant workers, Mexican, Chinese, and Irish, swung hammers, set ties, and blasted rock. Long shifts, little water, blowing sand. Still, the railroad crawled forward, stitching the desert to small towns. Bleak nights in Dodge City ended with boots on boardwalks and badges in a line. The peace officers worked as one to calm a rough cattle town. Wyatt Earp paced Front Street, pushing back gamblers and gunmen until order stuck. At Fort Abraham Lincoln in Dakota Territory, a wounded cavalry horse stands quiet, scars under his saddle. This is Comanche, called the lone survivor of Custer's command at the Little Bighorn. In June 1876, Lakota and Cheyenne fighters smashed the 7th Cavalry along the river. Found bleeding and riderless, Comanche was nursed back, retired with honors, and led in parades as a reminder of a costly fight. Canvas tents ring a dusty flat outside Tombstone, 1881. Coffee pops on a small fire, a hammer ticks at a wagon wheel, mules stamp, rifles lean on saddles. In town, Fly's photo gallery stays busy. Miners and gamblers line up for quick portraits. By noon, the camp folds. Packs strapped, horses bridled, they ride toward silver and trouble. In Tombstone that year, both were close. Turn of the century, a mining town in Utah, buzzed after dark. On Bingham High Street in 1900, saloon signs crowded the storefronts, doors swinging, pianos clanging, and paydays pouring into the street. Miners in dusty boots filled bar after bar, swapping stories and shots. For a state known for restraint, this block lived loud, cash, whiskey, and weekend bravado. Cards scatter across a small table. Two thick-coated gamblers lean in, pipes clenched, each holding a pistol on the other. A bottle stands like a referee. It's a studio setup from the late 1800s, but it rings true: booze, bluff, and bad tempers. In saloons like this, a winning hand could turn to shouting, and shouting could turn to gun smoke. General Custer walked the line at Hiddenwood Creek. Tents stood by the water, horses tied close, coffee boiling. He gave short orders while scouts rode in with news from the hills. Bugles answered. Everyone knew this was Lakota country. For a few hours, the camp felt safe. By evening, Custer had the men packed and riding deeper into the wide, risky plains. Cobblestones shine as a line of boxy trucks idles outside the Wagoner Brewing Company, 1913. Each rig wears a billboard-sized cowboy holding a bottle, American flags sprouting from the sides. Drivers grin under hats. The parade sells beer as much as it moves it. A year before war and a few years before Prohibition, advertising rolled on wheels. Before sunrise, a heavy knock. A tall man with a badge reads the warrant in a quiet voice. Bass Reeves, born enslaved, became a U.S. deputy marshal and ran down outlaws across Indian Territory. He used disguises, tracked like a scout, and brought in more than 3,000, most alive. In 1907, he stood with other lawmen, steady and respected, proof that courage can outride prejudice. Summer 1872, a mapping party halted near Cedar, Utah. Lieutenant George M. Wheeler's survey was tracing the west beyond the 100th meridian. Photographer Timothy O'Sullivan set his camera while Paiute families paused and allowed a portrait. The crew pushed on, charting rivers and passes. Weeks later, O'Sullivan nearly drowned when his boat jammed on the Truckee River, proof that maps were paid for with risk. Near Pytown, a wagon team yanks a car from deep mud, old muscle rescuing new machines. Long before engines, the Pony Express carried mail west, swapping horses every 12 miles and reaching California in 10 days until the telegraph made speed from wires, not hooves. In 1867, a young geologist, Clarence King, led a survey near Oriana, Nevada. His team rode wagons, shot photos, and took notes for the War Department. They mapped ground for rails and mines and learned who lived there. Snow squeaked under hooves at Fort Apache, 1890. The men in blue were the 10th Cavalry, Buffalo Soldiers, black troopers asked to ride where others wouldn't. They patrolled lonely canyons and high passes, short on supplies, long on grit. Prejudice shadowed them even in uniform, but they kept the line, scouting trails, escorting wagon trains, and finishing hard missions the frontier kept sending. On the sand at Diamond Creek, the Wheeler survey poses with their Native American guides after forcing a small boat up Black Canyon. Hats low, beards dusty, they rest on coils of rope, and a canvas-wrapped bow. Maps, oars, and nerve carried them through the Colorado's hard water. Gold Hill, south of Virginia City, was a busy mining town in the 1800s. The Comstock lode brought silver and gold that built schools, rail lines, and saloons. For a time, the mines made the town rich, but when the ore thinned, the boom quickly faded. Near midnight at Fort Sumner in 1881, Pat Garrett slipped into a dark room. A barefoot figure stepped close and asked, "Who's there?" Garrett fired once. The outlaw fell, Billy the Kid, a man he had once shared drinks with. Friendship was past, duty had teeth. That single shot turned Garrett from ranch hand to legend and ended the Kid's short, fast life on the New Mexico frontier. Wind and sun worked this cliff for ages. Then a visitor left a sentence. On Inscription Rock, New Mexico, a careful Spanish hand cut. Ensign Don Joseph de Paiva Vasconcelos passed by here, February 18, 1726. Long before cameras, he wrote his proof in stone. A century and a half later, a photograph made his voice visible again, near Fort Defiance. A Navajo family sits by a brush shelter. A loom leans between cedar poles. Corn hangs to dry. Children work a spindle while an elder watches the woodpile. It's a quiet moment of work and care. Even as soldiers and traders pressed in, families like this kept weaving, herding, and holding on to home. Fort Bowie, late summer. Two Apache leaders sit on a low stone wall, Nietzsche, quiet-eyed, and Geronimo, weathered and stubborn. Hats pulled low, blankets and gear scattered behind them, men drifting in the distance. The picture looks calm. The road ahead was anything but. Under low lamps in Bisbee, Arizona, a crowd leans over a faro layout. Chips clink, the dealer rakes the cards, a top hat shadows a face, a drink sweats by an elbow. In mining towns, faro was king. It moved money fast and riled men faster. One sharp word could flip the table, and every player knew to keep his cool, and sometimes his pistol close. Wind pushes the prairie grass. An American family stands outside a dugout stitched from sod and canvas. The roof is logs and dirt, the door hangs crooked. Boots muddy, aprons dusted, they stare into the lens as if to say, "This is home." With little wood, they built from earth, hauled water, and faced storms. Hard days, big skies, stubborn hope. Hats line the counter at the Cowboy Bar. The Frontier Saloon is no longer a rough plank room. It glitters with carved wood, mirrors, and polished brass. Cowboys trade trail dust for cocktails, proof that the Wild West was learning style as well as thirst. Morning light touched the prairie as the 3rd Infantry lined up outside the fort. A sergeant barked, rifles rose, and thin smoke hung in the air. Built in 1878, the post guarded wagon trails and stage lines, a small wall against a wide land. Scouts rode out, a coach rattled past, and the men drilled again, because out here, safety came from practice. Music hits, the gate bangs. Tilly Baldwin rises to her feet on a single racing horse. One boot on the saddle, arms loose, she rides the speed like a surfer on a wave. She broke broncs, took spills, and kept coming back for more. Crowds learned quickly. The main act wasn't a cowboy at all, it was a fearless cowgirl. Chips click at a faro table while a quiet crowd looked on, an 1895 scene in Arizona. In saloon towns, risk was a way of life. Many who left the comfort of the East were gamblers at heart. Some made cards their trade, as accepted then as law or medicine. Into a Fort Worth studio they strode, looking like bankers, not bandits. 5 men in neat suits and bowler hats, 3 seated, 2 standing. Flash, one crisp portrait. Weeks later, that classy picture turned into a wanted poster and a map for detectives. Out on the range, the wild bunch robbed banks and trains, split the take, and melted into open country. For a time, the West felt theirs, until the camera that praised them betrayed them. Miners leaned so long on the toll gate bar, their elbows grew calluses. In 1897, in Black Hawk, Colorado, the room was busy but not open to all. Laws kept native people out, and a Chinese customer risked his life just stepping inside. Silence over a dusty field. A spotted dog perches on a stool with a small target on its head. Across the line, a woman in a dark dress lifts her rifle. Annie Oakley rarely missed. She sliced playing cards, rang tossed coins, and even shot backward using a mirror. On Buffalo Bill's stage, her steady aim stunned crowds and proved that skill, not size, rules the trigger. Sawdust on the floor, whiskey on breath, pistols hanging loose, nights like these fed the Lincoln County War of 1878. Bragging turned to bullets fast. A few years later in Fort Worth, Butch Cassidy's crew dressed sharp for a studio portrait. Bad move. That tidy photograph became a roadmap for Pinkerton men who trailed the gang from train cars to bank doors to lonely hideouts. On the balcony of the Garbarino House restaurant in Colorado, townsfolk paused between meals and deals. As money flowed west, saloons polished their mirrors, added dining rooms, and chased respectability. Less sawdust and fistfights, more linens, menus, and families spending Saturday wages. Drums rolled in Ponca City as a hush fell. Mabel Hackney Tompkins tapped Skyrocket's flank. The horse shot forward and cleared a long dinner table in one clean leap. Hats flew, kids screamed. In those traveling arena shows, women riders were finally stealing the spotlight. With each bold jump, Mabel proved a cowgirl could be the headline, not the warm-up. On a creaky porch in Gilt Edge, 1897, a woman in buckskins tips her hat and laughs louder than the men. Calamity Jane rides hard, drinks harder, and talks fast, but she also shows up when trouble hits. She'll shoot a tin can at dusk, then sit by a sick bed till dawn. Rules were suggestions. Her spirit was the headline. Men crowd the Holy Moses Saloon, swapping trail dust for whiskey and stories. In 1890, Mineral County lived loud. Fiddles, card games, quick tempers. The plank floors are gone now, but the idea survives in today's taverns. A counter, a drink, and strangers turning into friends. A thin old man in a felt hat squints into the California sun. It's Wyatt Earp, long past Dodge and Tombstone, now giving tips to movie cowboys between takes. His last known photo shows a calm face that once stared down the OK Corral. He died in 1929, the final survivor of that gunfight, still shaping the West, this time on film. A cheer goes up as a cowboy rides his horse straight into a Helena saloon, about 1890. Lamps swing, the bartender tries not to laugh. Not everyone got the same welcome. Soldiers were often turned away, seen as government trouble, and blamed for sickening the saloon girls. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on anything.